It's Monday, the 5th of September 2022. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes, and there's some big ones today. Let's jump into story number 1. We can get ready for weeks and months of debate about multi-employer bargaining. Get ready to hear that term a lot, because we've got business leaders, including Alan Joyce from Qantas and Brad Banducci, the boss of Woolies, warning that it could swing the balance too much towards employees, while at the same time the government is dismissing the naysayers.
Yeah, multi-employer bargaining, if enacted, is probably the most fundamental change to the industrial relations system as a result of the Jobs and Skills Summit. Basically means workers or a union can engage in bargaining with multiple employers. For example, a union can negotiate with Coles and Woolworths at the same time. A concern from employers is that it gives too much power to workers or a union, and they could effectively close an industry if there's an industrial dispute. Now, Qantas's Alan Joyce said the idea of industry-wide bargaining had been left behind a long time ago for good reason. Brad Banducci from Woolworths warned that multi-employer bargaining could reduce productivity for retailers. The Business Council of Australia President Tim Reid said he wanted guarantees that multi-employer bargaining would be opt-in and not compulsory. There'll be a big argument over that, whether it is opt-in or compulsory. The Jobs and Skills Summit, of course, finished on Friday. A few big announcements on Friday. There's a $4,000 work bonus income bank credit. Basically, pensioners can earn more before their payments are reduced. There's also an increase in the permanent migration ceiling for this financial year. There'll be extra places for tech, healthcare and infrastructure. All in all, I think, Michael, the Jobs and Skills Summit was a success for the government. Now the hard work begins.
Yeah, sure does. On to story number 2, Sean, and it was the first weekend of spring, traditionally the busiest season of the year for the housing market, but it started with a bit of a whimper.
Particularly in Sydney, Michael, where nearly 1 in 4 vendors withdrew their houses from auction, with the Reserve Bank tipped to increase the official cash rate by 50 basis points tomorrow and mortgage rates expected to rise by a similar amount soon after. It's unlikely to be a great spring for the market. The preliminary national auction clearance rate over the weekend was okay, 62%, but there's actually 10% fewer houses for sale than a week earlier. And this is spring. Not supposed to happen that way. Melbourne's clearance rate was pretty good, 65%. Sydney was at 60%. Adelaide continues to be the best performer, 70%, at least among the capital cities. Brisbane hit 53%. Doesn't sound good, but it's actually better than it was the previous couple of weeks.
All right, how about this one, Sean? Story number 3, Crypto.com, which is the digital currency app that's been advertising pretty heavily in Australia, has accidentally refunded, so I'm already laughing, a woman in Melbourne $7 million rather than the $70 that she was owed.
And apparently the woman has already spent some of it, including on a $1.35 million home. According to Bloomberg, the firm discovered during an audit in December that it had made an error in processing an Aussie $100 refund 7 months earlier. That's according to court documents. An account number had been accidentally entered into the payment amount field. Hence the mistake. Victoria's Supreme Court has ordered the home, which was bought by the woman's sister, to be sold and the money returned to the company, though it is still going through court. Whoa, what a mistake.
That is a sizable error, that one. Okay, story number 4, big story developing in the UK, Sean. British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is expected to be unveiled as the country's next Prime Minister tonight. This is after a 7-week contest against former Chancellor Rishi Sunak.
Opinion polls of the party's 160,000 plus members have consistently given Ms Truss a substantial lead, with members supporting her promises of tax cuts. If she is victorious, and that's very likely, the 47-year-old will head to Balmoral Castle in Scotland tomorrow to visit the Queen, shortly after her predecessor Boris Johnson hands in his resignation. She'll then move straight into Downing Street. It's remarkable that the UK can pretty much have had a lame duck Prime Minister for 7 weeks while this is all going on, particularly when the economy is really struggling.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. Sean, story number 5 starts with a question for you. Are you Apple or Android?
I'm sorry, I'm Apple.
I'm also Apple, so it appears you and I are now in the majority because Apple has overtaken Android devices to account for more than half of smartphones used in the US, just as the tech giant is pushing into sectors including finance and healthcare.
The 50% mark is the iPhone's highest share since it launched in 2007, according to Counterpoint Research. About 150 devices use Google's Android operating system, led by Samsung and Lenovo. That's up against the Apple system. So it's pretty incredible what Apple has been able to do. A research director at Counterpoint said over the past 4 years, the flow has consistently been Android to iOS.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 5th of September, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough for you, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.